Welcome to the Lady Up America podcast. I'm Diane Canada. I'm so glad you're here today. Thanks for tuning in. The hostages are home. We're going to be talking all about it on today's show. Be right back.
Taking back this house, taking back this town. Mama, don't back down. Just a lady up, lady up, lady up.
All right, ladies, we're breaking down today's news headlines with my good friend Steve Gill. Steve served in the White House in both the Bush and the Clinton administration. He also is a global political commentator, and he's the editor-in-chief of TriStar Daily. Welcome to the show, Steve. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me. And I tell people I'm not sure who's more ashamed of my service in the Clinton White House, me or them. But I was there on a one-year White House fellowship, so I extended over one administration into the other, working on international trade. So it did give me a unique perspective.
It did. It definitely did. Between two completely different political parties and in a very tumultuous time. So we forgive you. We don't hold that against you on this show.
Thank you.
Just so you know, we appreciate you. Okay, Steve, we want to talk about both local politics and we want to also transition to national politics. So tell us first what's going on the local level.
I think the biggest thing is the aftermath of the contentious primaries in both the Republican and Democrat side of the aisle in the 7th Congressional District special election. On the Republican side, we had 11 candidates running millions of dollars in attack ads from out-of-state PACs spewed into the district, helping Matt Van Epps, and then ultimately an endorsement from President Trump after early voting had started. So Van Epps ends up winning with 52% of the vote, which is pretty significant in an 11 candidate race. And he'll move to the December 2nd general election, facing Afton Ben. She is a very progressive, almost self-described AOC of Tennessee.
Yeah.
And she won a very difficult primary. 4 candidates. They were only spread by about a point or two between them, but she ended up with about 27% of the votes, getting the Democrat nomination. It is a very Republican district. President Trump carried it by 20. Congressman Mark Green, who vacated the seat and caused the special election, won by 20. It's an 11-plus Republican district. So Republicans, assuming they can reunify after this bitter primary, should be able to handle it pretty easily. So I think that's kind of been the big aftermath story of the last week. But moving forward, I think there's some lessons as we look ahead. One of the state representatives in that race, Lee Reeves, from Williamson County, finished a distant third in his own home county, spent over $500,000 and yet fared very poorly, not only in the district overall, but in his home county, making him very vulnerable when we look next August to a Republican primary with him having some blood in the water that may attract some sharks. And then on the other hand, you had Jody Barrett, who finished second in the race, again, had millions of dollars in attack ads targeting him. He won very handily in his own state House district. And I think there are the prospects that he moves from that second place finish, but strong appearance, to maybe challenging State Senator Kerry Roberts, who's the state senator from that district, in an August primary just about 9 months from now. So I think as we look not just at what happened, we now look ahead to what's going to happen next. And I would look at a contentious state house race over Lee Reeves' district, and perhaps Kerry Roberts being challenged by Jody Barrett in that state Senate seat just a little west of Nashville.
All right, Steve, that's awesome. Let's shift over to the national or international politics, and let's look at what's going on in Israel this week.
Yeah, I think 2 things really should attract our attention internationally. I mean, Donald Trump securing peace between Israel and Hamas in Gaza, getting the release of the final 20 or so hostages. I guess to use the words of Donald Trump, this was huge. Now, again, there have been peace attempts in that region before that never hold, but it does look like that with the other nations in that area, with the ability to also perhaps pour some money into rebuilding Gaza and allowing the folks that live there to come home in what is now rubble and be in a rebuilt moving forward, could be, transitional from a millennial type standpoint. Keep in mind, though, Hamas is not simply going to go away. They are still there. The terrorist ideology that promotes them and Hezbollah in Lebanon is still there. And I think there are still some tough times moving forward. The other thing I would mention internationally is you also have President Trump and his team talking about giving Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. Ukraine is losing the Ukraine-Russia conflict badly. They've lost probably 1 million dead, more than that in terms of wounded. They are losing badly, and yet the Europeans, the Western Europeans, the U.S. continues to pour billions and billions of dollars into that losing effort, which is a waste of taxpayer money, and none of it's accounted for. But the Tomahawk missile discussion is particularly damaging. Tomahawk missiles can carry nuclear warheads. And Russia has said that if the U.S. supplies Tomahawks to Ukraine and Tomahawk missiles start flying towards Russia, they will assume they are tipped with nuclear weapons, and they will fire nuclear weapons back at Western Europe and Ukraine before those first Tomahawks hit. This is extraordinarily provocative. It is extraordinarily irrational of the Trump team to even be talking about supplying these weapons to hit inside Russia that will move this to World War III. And I hope that President Trump will start listening to more clear-headed advisors other than those who have a financial interest in this war continuing. Some of the former generals you see on Fox News regularly, they actually benefit from the war. Military industrial companies are funding their, quote, institutes, their nonprofits. And at least one, General Jack Keane, is the CEO of a company that makes Humvees. He has a financial interest in this conflict continuing, and yet is out there promoting the warmongering agenda of some in Ukraine and some in Western Europe. So watch very carefully, not only the end of conflict in Gaza, but the beginning of perhaps World War III if we supply weapons that ratchet things up between Ukraine and Russia.
That's a terrifying thought.
Well, and I would advise President Trump, the best way to not get a Nobel Peace Prize is to start World War III. So before you supply weapons that initiate and provoke World War III, if you really want a Nobel Peace Prize, don't give weapons that are nuclear tipped or can be to a Ukraine administration that has already behaved extraordinarily badly, and which everybody acknowledges they've lost, they are losing, and pouring more good money after bad or more bad weapons after bad is not the path to peace there.
Do you think we will see a ceasefire? Do you think we'll see an agreement at all on the table before I let you go here?
I think we will probably in the next 6 months, but I think there's going to be a lot more battlefield carnage. I think Russia is going to put the pedal to the metal to say, look, we have offered, peace deals. They have been rejected by Zelensky, who continues to say that Ukraine has to be in NATO. That's been a bright red line from the beginning. That is not going to happen. And yet that's the only peace proposal Ukraine puts forward. It is irrational. It is not going to happen. So I think Russia is now going to move things up on the battlefield. They're starting to hit infrastructure around Kiev, turning off the water, turning off the lights. It's about to start snowing in Kiev. It's going to be a brutal time for the people there, unless or until the Western Europeans and the U.S. and Ukraine decides that peace is better than what they're suffering now. Millions of military-age young men have fled Ukraine rather than fight for their country. My question is, why are we funding a fight that most of them are not willing to engage in?
Well, good food for thought. Thank you so much for stopping in with us today, Steve. It's going to be good to have you here each week. And I just want to give a plug to TriStar Daily, tristardaily.com. Please go on there and follow Steve and his team for great editorial content. And thanks for the great job that you do, Steve. Really appreciate it.
We'll talk again next week.
I invited my friend Elena Pomerantz for tea time today to talk over the headlines. Welcome to the show. Good to see you, my friend. Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
You have ties both to Israel and to Ukraine. So I thought you would be the perfect person to come on and help us deconstruct what we just heard. Can you explain to people quickly your ties to both Israel and to Ukraine?
Well, I was born and raised in Odessa, Ukraine. And when I was 18 years old, myself and our whole family were able to leave former Soviet Union thanks to the agreement that was made between President Reagan at the time and President Gorbachev. And the doors for the Russian Jews were open yet again. And that's how we fled former Soviet Union. So that's my connection to Ukraine. And as a Jewish person, I have family in Israel as well. And in fact, a lot of my family has been in Israel since the 50s, that been slowly leaving. And actually, I spoke to my mom the other day. Apparently, even before that, she told me was called Palestina is where they lived. But I keep getting educated about all these things.
You're learning.
Way before Israel was formed, but Jews were already there anyway.
Yeah. So, and for those ladies who may not know, let me just interject this real quick, that after World War II, Great Britain actually basically made it official. They gave that land, because they were in control of that land at the time, right after World War II. They allowed the Jewish people to go back to Israel and claim that as their homeland again, to return. So just as the Bible says that the Jewish people were scattered all over the world, there would be a time when they would be gathered and they would come back to their homeland. And so that marked that in 1948. So with your family being there from the 50s forward, they were part of that regathering.
Yeah. Yeah, they were after the World War II. Correct.
It's amazing. It's just amazing. You know, we're seeing so much biblical prophecy coming to pass in our lifetime. And I know you and I have talked about this. We wonder if we're living in the end times. We know we are, because Jesus said even 2,000 years ago, he said that he was coming soon in his calendar, and ours is very different.
Right.
But we're just seeing all of this play out, you know, and God also said that event of the Jewish people being regathered to Israel would kind of start the timeline. He said that generation would see the coming of the Lord. So we know we're in these last days. How does all of this make you feel, that the release of the hostages, this hope for peace, what we're seeing going on with Russia? Like, there's so many mixed emotions from what Steve just said. How does it all make you feel?
Well, it's been very emotional. I would say probably about 2 weeks or so that Trump has been kind of already saying it's near, it's coming. And in the past 2 or 3 days, I barely slept. I don't think there's any Jewish person that slept at all before they even were released. It's just, there's that connection that we all have among each other, that it all feels like family. It's like, I'm going to try not to cry. It feels like these are my children, these kids who are the children, they're kids, they're in their 20s, maybe 30, early 30s, that are been captive. And one was completely the whole entire time kept in the tunnel, that hasn't seen a light a day of 736 days, not a day of light. And so knowing what they've been through, knowing what their road ahead is, and seeing them and seeing these poor families, I cannot even imagine the pain of a parent to live a life, to wake up in the morning and go to sleep knowing that your child is there and God knows what's happening to them. And they would torture them with videos and the pictures to show that this is what's happening to their kids. It's horrific. So to see them come home is a mixed emotion of feelings for a couple of reasons. First of all, everybody's happy they're finally home. For Jewish people, it's very important. Life is important to us, unlike to Hamas, and even dead as well, which is why it's important to get the bodies as well. But just watching them embrace their parents and finally being home, but at the same time, it's not over. Right. And like Steve was saying, it's far from over. I mean, don't get me wrong, grateful to President Trump to be able to achieve even this far.
Yeah.
It is, nobody has been able to achieve that. So we're here, but now Hamas is regrouping. They're even trying to rebrand themselves. They're currently murdering publicly their own people that they're considering that were possibly helping Israel in all of this, or whatever they were helping, whatever they don't like them for, their own people, public.
They're animals. They are animals. These people are animals.
So there's a lot to do, and I can't wait to hear from President Trump to see what the next stage is going to be, what the plans are, because getting the hostages back is amazing. Super grateful for that. Giving them 2,000 criminals back is horrific.
Yeah.
And letting them regroup and continue the hate, because what people don't understand, everybody's so happy about the ceasefire, but we've been here before so many times.
Yeah.
It's not enough. We need to disarm Hamas. We need to, and if people who I am pro-civil. I don't want anything happening to civilian people. We had this discussion, and no Jewish person wants them dead. Anything that happens to civilian is not something that IDF is wanting to do. But in order for them to thrive, Hamas has to be gone.
Yeah.
Hezbollah has to be gone. All of these terrorist organizations that right now are regrouping, and they're quick and they're good and they're not that easy to eradicate. But with them being in power, nobody's going to benefit. Their own people don't benefit. Israel doesn't benefit. Nobody benefits from it.
Yeah.
So just waiting to hear what is next. What are we doing? Even the older, I was watching the news and just mind blowing. Finally, the aid is coming through.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, the aid has been flooding Gaza. Yeah. It's just not getting to them because Hamas gets it and then sells it back to them.
Yeah.
And they tried to get it. They killed their own people to even try to get to that food. And seeing the Red Cross, 2 years, not a single Red Cross representative checked on hostages. But yet they were there as an Uber transport. Thanks.
Yeah, don't get me started about the American Red Cross.
Good old American Red Cross.
An organization that we were raised to think just does so much good in the world, but not so much. I'm trying very, very hard to be grateful for what has happened, because what Trump and all of those leaders of all those countries did together yesterday and coming together was extraordinary and an act of God. We don't want to take any of that away.
Absolutely.
But absolutely, it's not over if they are allowed to continue the terrorism and just regroup, recalibrate, and come back again. And if I'm not mistaken, I heard that they are already threatening that. Mm-hmm. They're already threatening to do even worse than what they did on October 7th. So I'm sure that Netanyahu and I'm sure that Trump, they're very aware. And we needed to get those hostages back. They have no leverage now. They're the weakest that they've been. So I say we go and we finish it off. And something tells me they probably will.
I pray they are. Yeah. I always hope for the best and just give God the glory. Obviously, this is, like you said, this is not by chance. How many presidents and how many people and how many attempts to have peace talks and was broken that didn't even happen. And then finally we have something. I'm definitely grateful for that. Don't get me wrong, like you said. Yeah. But it's hard not to be cautiously optimistic. Because there's a lot of work to be done. But I'm definitely hopeful though. Yeah,
we are too. Yeah, I thank you so much for taking a few minutes to come on with me today and just absorb this, like I said, and talk through this from you having such personal one-on-one connection to both of these countries. It's really a help to us and to my listeners to hear your perspective. So thank you so much.
My pleasure.
So now what we want to do is take our Lady Up America techniques and we want to apply them to this conversation, because as you start to have conversations with your friends, your coworkers, your neighbors, your family about what's going on in Israel this week, you need to be armed and you need to be equipped for these conversations. So we always start with decluttering, and then we move to housekeeping, then we move to entertaining, and then we move to gardening. So let's start with decluttering. And what I mean by that is decluttering is where we get our balance. Like it's where we kind of clear the smoke screens and we get down to the brass tacks of what's really going on in this conversation. We always want to get our center from the Bible. Never, ever from our own thoughts, never from our own feelings, certainly not from an emotional standpoint, but rooted in biblical values. Now, I understand that some people interpret the Bible very differently than other people do. And I understand that there can be many different angles on this. We speak from a Christian worldview. We speak from a relationship with Christ worldview, not a using religion as a weapon. And we certainly don't read other things into the scriptures that are not there. So we want to look at this from a very objective standpoint. And you want to understand the character of God as you grow closer to him and you start to understand how he operates, which he clearly demonstrates for us, not only in the Bible, but in our own personal relationship with him. Then the easier it is to get that balance, the easier it is for us to have that discernment. Discernment is a gift from the Holy Spirit. It's giving us the ability to look at everything and make sense of it, to kind of see what's being said, what's not being said, because we're understanding it from the character of God, not taking scriptures out of context to apply to the narrative that we prefer. Okay, so this is the decluttering step that we always want to take. Let's start with scripture. God is talking in Genesis 12:3 about Israel. And he says, this is his covenant with Abraham. And he says, I will bless them that bless thee, and I will curse them that curseth thee. So God is basically saying that those who support Israel will be blessed, and those who curse Israel will be cursed. That is a generational promise given to Abraham, and it stands to this day. And we'll talk about that a little bit more here in a minute, but I just want to back this up with a few more scriptures that reinforce it. Because again, we don't ever want to take anything out of context. God says in Isaiah 40:1-2, he says, comfort my people, says your God. Speak tenderly to Jerusalem and proclaim that her warfare has ended. This is a call for Christians to support and comfort Israel. Let's do another one. In Psalm 122:6, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May those who love you prosper. And then there's one more in Zechariah 2:8. For this is what the Lord Almighty says, after the glorious one has sent me against the nations that have plundered you, for whoever touches you touches the apple of his eye. There's no doubt that God loves Israel. God loves the Jewish people. Also in Revelation, when he comes back after the rapture, when he comes back, he will build his church in Jerusalem. When he, everything that we believe as Christians centers around Israel. So there are those people that will say, well, God was talking about the old ancient Israel. He's not really talking about modern day Israel, because modern day Israel is really not the same. Those Jewish people are not the same as the Jewish people from back when. Okay, let's just think about that for a second as we're decluttering here. God said in the Bible that his people, the Jewish people, after the war that literally decimated Jerusalem, he said that his people would be scattered across the earth, and they were. They were scattered everywhere. They took refuge in Russia. They took refuge in all different countries, in Germany, all these different places. And this is why we also saw in Germany that there were so many Jewish people. The Holocaust was a manifestation of the hatred toward the Jewish people. That was a spiritual attack on God's people. After the spiritual war there, after the horrific Holocaust, and all those Jewish people lost their lives, after that war ended, as I mentioned earlier with Elena, they were then regathered, just as the Bible had said. He would regather his people, and they would again take the land of Israel. They would re-inherit that land, their rightful home. And that happened after World War II, when Great Britain gave them back their homeland. And they actually occupy only a space that's as big as New Jersey. They are entitled to a lot more land, but they were only given that small patch there. They ended up giving more of their land away, trying to create peace, trying to negotiate deals with other Middle Eastern immigrants there, or other Middle Eastern natives there, trying hard to integrate. And as we can see even with this October 7th attack, it's been nearly impossible for them. But when they returned back to Israel, it was desolate. It was just barren. There was hard. You would think that it was going to be really, really hard to rebuild in that area with what they were given. But God blessed that land. Now they are one of the most innovative, leading nations in the world when it comes to agriculture, when it comes to technology. They have flourished, and there's no other explanation for that other than the hand of God. Now, are they perfect? No. Just like here in America, we've got wonderful Christians here in America, but we've also got people that are, could not be further from the Bible operating here in America. It's just like that in Israel too. In Tel Aviv, that's a very openly gay environment. There's so many things that would defile the Bible that go on in Israel, just like here. God blessed America. Is everyone a Christian? No. Does everyone walk and talk and think and act like a Christian? No. Same way in Israel is everyone, a Jew. Now, we do have a lot of people who have converted to Christianity from the Jewish faith, but there are a lot of, old school Jewish people that do not recognize Jesus as their Messiah, but they are still God's chosen people. Many of them observe the Torah. Many of them observe Christianity. Many of them do not, but it doesn't mean that God doesn't love them just the same, just like he loves us here in America. So we owe a great debt to the Jewish people. Without the Jewish people, without Israel, we would not have Jesus Christ. We would not have our Messiah. He was a very devout Jewish rabbi. Okay, so we need to make sure that we, in our own hearts, as we move to the housekeeping step now, that we don't have some kind of hidden, any kind of hidden, wrong thinking about the Jewish people. We need to clean our own hearts. We need to pray and ask God to give us wisdom when it comes to the Jewish people in the state of Israel right now. We need to be supporting them. We need to be following what the Bible says. We need to be praying over them. I pray all the time that those who don't know Jesus in Israel would come to know him. So we need to keep our hearts pure. Those are our ancestors, just like they are theirs. And that'll bring us then to our entertaining step. When we sit and we listen to people like Elena, we want to lean in and we want to listen to where she's coming from. Someone who's actually connected to these regions, connected to these areas. So as you're talking with your friends who are, having these confusing thoughts, or maybe who don't really understand the biblical context, lean in and listen to them. So you want to use phrases like, tell me more about why you believe that. Help me see this through your eyes. I want to understand where you're coming from. And you're dropping all of your need to give your opinion, to offer up what you think, right? In the entertaining step, you're just leaning in to listen to them and to earn permission then to be heard. You really want to listen. Maybe you'll learn something. Okay. And then as we move to our gardening step, this is the area where then we plant seeds. We are releasing all outcomes. We are not coming on too strong. We're not trying to convert someone to our way of thinking. We're simply planting seeds and helping to guide people to see things for themselves. So we could ask lingering questions here, like, how does any people trace their lineage? Is it traced back to a land, or is it traced back to their people? Or you could ask a lingering question like, what would a Jewish person have to gain by being so proud of their Jewish heritage in a region that hates Jews? Okay, so you want to be careful with your lingering questions when you drop these, that they're not gotcha questions, or they're not yes or no questions. You're simply planting very insightful, smart, lingering seeds. They're going to linger in the hearts and the minds of that person long after your conversation is over. They're very smartly crafted. They're not defensive questions. They're genuinely interesting questions that stop someone in their tracks and make them think, I never thought about it like that. Right? And then as soon as you drop that lingering question, then you want to make an excuse to leave the room gracefully, not abruptly, but you just make an excuse to get away from the conversation, because you want that lingering question to be the last thing they remember, and you don't want to open it up for debate. You don't want to dilute the power of that question. Okay, so you drop that question, and then you'll say, I am so sorry, I've got to run. Or, you know what, I've got to get up and go get some more coffee from the kitchen. Can I bring you anything? But you make a polite excuse to leave the room. And then that lets that question set in their heart, right? To get rooted in their heart or in their mind. And then the next time you see them, they're a lot more open to talk with you because you didn't come on too strong. You didn't try to push your point of view. That's the idea of the lingering question in your gardening step. I hope that helps. What I'm liking, what I'm loving, and what I'm learning. I like that the season is changing. Summer is my favorite season, but I really like all of the autumn weather coming in, the leaves falling, everything just changing, this changing of the seasons. I'm really embracing it. What I'm loving is sentimental gifts that I get. My studio here is full of sentimental things. One of them is this beautiful hand embroidered napkin. that it's a linen napkin that has my name embroidered on it in pink, of course, from my friend Lisa. I love that. The cup that I drink out of, this was given to me by my friend Anna. She gave me this. She's from Czechoslovakia. She fled there, communist Slovakia, back in the 80s, and a very harrowing story. But she gave me this beautiful teacup here. It's got gold rims, and it's so beautiful. It's handmade, hand painted, and it's from her family's personal collection. So I drink out of this all the time, and I love it. I have dolls. I have porcelain dolls here that my mom brought me. Everything in my studio, I'm just wrapped in love. This beautiful wrap here that sits behind my chair was given to me in love from someone that I went and spoke for. So I just love looking around my studio and seeing things that have a story behind them and have meaning behind them that were given. What I'm learning, I learned a very hard lesson this week, and that is to stay focused. The Lord has been really working on me about this. I have a tendency, and maybe a lot of you do too, you want to help. You want to help people, right? We have hearts and we want to help. If we've got a skill set or an ability to do something, we want to do it. Well, I've been doing a lot of that this year, so much so that it has taken me off course from a lot of my Lady Up work. And it has really caused me to neglect my work a lot. So I haven't been showing up here as consistently as I should have been. And I apologize for that. I recommit to you today to do that, and to really putting a lot more effort into my monthly workshops, my television commentary, my online trainings. I need to just be very, very focused on my lane. And I encourage you to do the same. What is it that God has put on your heart that you need to have on your plate, and how much is too much to add to that plate? So maybe we just need to take a step back sometimes and get in prayer and say, Lord, what needs to come off? What can I put on? And always be prayerful about whatever you do add to that plate. Make sure it's something that He is asking you to do and not just something you're trying to do because you want to please someone, or because you don't want to let someone down, or because you just want to help. All these reasons are noble, but if they take you out, if they force you to neglect the one thing that God has told you to do, then it's not okay. So we have to get better at saying no, which is really hard for us girls. I know. We have to just do it in a very graceful way. I'm so sorry. I would love to help, but I just can't right now. Or, I would love to help, but this is just not a good time right now with everything else I have going on. We can say that. I give you permission. I give me permission to start saying that more, and to just be very committed to and very focused on the work that God has given us to do. Let's run our race well. All right, ladies, I've enjoyed being with you today. Thank you for tuning in as we face the rest of this week. Let's take our lessons with us, but more importantly, let's take the Lord with us into everything that we do. I'll see you next time. Lady Up.
Taking back this house, taking back this town. Mama, don't back down, just a lady up.